I wanted to focus right now on the State of the Union last night because while I was watching it and I gave you some of my thoughts, I know who else was watching it because she was live tweeting it, was Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman from here in upstate New York, and she's been gracious enough to give us a few minutes so that we can get her thoughts on it. She joins us live right now on WGY Mornings. Morning, Congresswoman.
Good morning, Doug. Great to be with you.
Always good to have you on as well. I'm fairly certain, I don't think I need a crystal ball to know that you didn't like the speech, but what were your immediate takeaways from it?
I've listened to quite a few State of the Unions at this point. I've heard President Obama deliver State of the Unions and President Trump, and I would say this was a much weaker State of the Union than I've heard. States of the Union are always opportunities to try to rally the American people, to unify the country, and to talk about victories, especially policy victories. And unfortunately, last year we've seen a year of crises because of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's failed far-left policies. And they're going to be held accountable because it's unified Democrat government in Washington right now. I also was very concerned that when it comes to what his suggested policies are, his platform for this year, it's more of the same. It's doubling down on the trillions of dollars of spending, and it's doubling down on essentially the same strategy when it comes to addressing the war on Ukraine, the crisis in Europe. And we need to do so much more in terms of tougher sanctions and unleashing American energy independence. So while Joe Biden talked about made in America, he pretty much meant everything except energy made in America. There's still this obsession on the left with reliance upon foreign oil and gas when it comes to energy. And this is really important right now that we get this right, that we reignite American energy production rather than the war on American energy we've seen under this administration, which people are paying more for at the gas pump.
You know, I don't think that everybody stuck with it for its entirety. I know my wife at about the 40-minute mark said, I am sorry, I am falling asleep. Literally, I am falling asleep. I got to go to bed. And I said, oh, I get it, honey. Believe me, if it wasn't for work, I'd be falling asleep. But if you stayed with it till the end, you heard him. He couldn't help himself. So he did use the phrase, the state of our union is strong. And I thought, you know, we've all seen every one of these polls, and they're coming from not what you would consider right wing or hard right. CBS News, for example, Quinnipiac, these polls that say he's got a 30% approval rating, and he's sitting there looking at us saying the state of our union is strong when everybody knows the majority of the country thinks we're not headed in the right direction. My point being, he's trying to sell you on something that we've already ruled on. We're not buying that.
That's right. And I think fundamentally that shows that this administration and president continue to be out of touch with Americans. It's like when they said, Doug, that inflation is transitory. And it's not. I mean, go to the grocery store. People talk to me about it all the time when I'm in my district, and there's no signs of stopping. And people connect that very effectively with the policies and the trillions of dollars of spending coming out of this administration and this unified Democrat government in Washington. The other thing that strikes me is this president always wants to pass the buck, always wants to have an excuse or to blame others for all these crises that we are facing in this country today. The other piece that really, really upset me was he mentioned the NYPD officers whose funeral he attended. So he mentions them, but yet at the same time, when he was in New York State, said that the rest of the country should follow New York State when it comes to our crime record and when it comes to our bail reform record. We know that that's caused a crime crisis in New York State, and he has the audacity to say at the State of the Union speech that he is opposed to defunding the police when New York State has defunded their NYPD by a significant amount, and Democrats are the party of defunding the police. The American people are smart, though. This is not going to move the polls. I was already looking last night at the immediate polls. Typically, you see a jump, except for with this president. There is no jump when it comes to State of the Union polls. And it's unfortunate. We need the November election to come as quickly as possible so that we can flip the House of Representatives and serve as a check on this failing administration.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik joins us live here on WGY Mornings. You know, you're right. I watched that, and when he mentioned those two officers, I thought, you know what, I don't love that he's doing this. And one of the problems Joe Biden has had historically is that he will make one speech in one location, and then he'll make another speech in another location that goes against or doesn't stay consistent with his previous speech, and he acts like no one is going to connect those dots like you just did. Another example of that would be last night when he said, we got to stop looking at the opposition. I know we have our differences, but we got to stop looking at them as the enemy. And I thought, well, that's a good line. Let's rewind a month ago, though, when you were in Georgia, Mr. President, and you were saying anyone who didn't support your voting bill was Jefferson Davis. I mean, come on.
Yes, he has not unified the country, and they're deeply out of touch. The couple of issues, the vast majority of speech, I thought was very partisan, very left-leaning, and unworkable, frankly, for the American people, not just the Republicans in Congress, but for the American people. There were a few issues, though, that let's see what the proposals are, but they're issues that we've had a record of being able to deliver bipartisan solutions. The cancer moonshot, the mental health crisis, which, of course, we know is a result of lockdowns advocated for by Democrat elected officials by this administration. The other piece I would say, Doug, on the division, this is the White House that was so divisive during this past year of COVID. Rather than unifying the country, they pitted vaccinated versus unvaccinated people. They pitted people who didn't support the vaccine mandate, even if they were vaccinated, saying that somehow they're anti-American. That is not a unifying message. And the other thing that was just really out of touch is, they sent out requirements that members of Congress were supposed to wear masks, and then magically the day before the State of the Union, they wiped that away because Joe Biden wants a reset, and he wants the American people to forget that Democrats are the party of masking our kids. Democrats are the party of locking down businesses.
Yeah, this will sound glib. I don't know how else to put it, but it might have benefited them if they did have masks, because Nancy Pelosi, I'm not kidding, she legitimately looked like she didn't have control of her facial expressions, her movements at times. She was smiling really awkwardly at some things. She was making weird gestures that didn't fit in any way. And I thought, we're supposed to be giving a symbol of strength here, of power. And I just kept watching her and going, wow, this is weird. What's happening? And while she was doing that, Biden was making misstatements like you can't build a wall high enough to keep a vaccine out. It didn't, the optics of it weren't great, in other words.
Well, he was talking about the Iranians when he meant the Ukrainians. There were lots of verbal missteps. And I was seated, you get assigned seats if you're in leadership, and I had sort of a straight view into Speaker Pelosi and Joe Biden. And Speaker Pelosi, it was odd, especially when she stood up very awkwardly. I mean, she has the printed speech in front of her, so that's what she's doing. She's following it and looking in advance. But I turned to my colleague, Steve Scalise, and I thought, what is she doing? What is happening? So it was very odd. And, there were a lot of missteps. There were moments of the speech when Joe Biden really struggled to get through the statement. I think it shows that we have a president of the United States not only with failed policies, but not up to the job of serving as commander-in-chief. And we see that even this past weekend when he went to Delaware, when we have the most significant war in Europe since World War II. As a former White House staffer, I will tell you that presidents of the United States will stay at that White House. They will be in the Situation Room, conducting meetings on national security issues when there is a crisis of that level. So, again, polling shows that the American people are very concerned on whether Joe Biden is up to the job.